Hello everyone. In this tutorial video, I'm going to explain to you how to access JSON data file using AJAX and JavaScript and how to display it or those data file using jQuery. But before that, please support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit also the notification bell so that you will be notified with all the new videos that I'm going to upload in this channel. And so like I said, in this tutorial video, I'm going to explain to you how to access the JSON data file using AJAX and JavaScript and how to display it using jQuery. So basically, this is what we're going to do. Here it is. This will be the output. We will make it simple as this. And our JSON file will be something like this. As you can see, it's something like this. So this is our JSON file. Now the equivalent XML of this JSON file will be something like this. I have a video explaining to you how to create a JSON file. If you did not yet watch that video, please do watch that first so that you will have an idea how to create a JSON file. And this is the thumbnail of that video. Now, here in this tutorial video, I already created it. So we will process this one and we will display it in a browser. Okay, so we will be using AJAX and JavaScript here. And then to display it, we will be using jQuery. All right, so again, like I said, this is the XML version of this JSON file here. And so again, by looking at the XML file, we have here an ordinary data here, a normal data here, and then we have an element here, right, or this data here, and it uses this element dname with 2 attributes. And so the conversion of that will be something like this in JSON file. And then, as you notice, we have marks here, and it has elements inside. So it will be something like this in JSON file. Okay, so let's start coding how to display this data in our browser. And so I already created the file so that it will be a bit faster for us to complete it. So it is something like this. So as you notice in the body of the HTML, we will just simply display it inside a div, right? This data here that you can see here in our browser here, we will just be displaying using a div. Okay, so we will display it inside the div, something like this. And we will assign an ID for this div as here. So it will be like this. As you can see, it's only simple. We will just display all this data in one line and then followed by the set of records, set of data for the second record on the next line or on the next row. So we'll just make it simple like this because the concept is just simply how to get this value of ID, right? The value of dname, the value of age, marks, and this data inside this marks element. As simple as this. This is the simple concept that we're trying to discuss to you, that I'm trying to discuss to you. So, right? So as you can see, we will be using AJAX again here. All right. Now, all these files are inside, all these files are inside one folder. So as you can see, here it is. So we have the jQuery folder, which contain the jQuery library, and we have the HTML file, the JSON file, the XML file, right? And all of these are inside a folder. So this is the setup of it. And so it will be like this. jQuery will be declared as something like this. And then we need another script tag here wherein we will place our function ready, as you can see here. Then inside the function ready, we will be displaying here, or we will place here our AJAX. As you can see, it's already set up. The name of our JSON file is example1.json, and I've already set up the error function here. And so obviously we will be going directly here in the success function, where we will access now the JSON file here. I will be using the for statement, so something like this. So it will loop from the very beginning up until the end. So in this case, we only have 2, so it will loop 2 times. So if you have 3 records or 4 records or more than that, so for statement is the best statement to use. Alright, so we will loop through the records, something like that. So here I'm just going to use I initially this 0, right? So if you remember, our JSON is an array. So when we test this using the Firefox, if we will test the validity of this, we will have something like this. Alright, so as you can see, it's something like this. As I discussed last time, each record will be inside a box. Okay, so this first record here will be inside a box or an element, and that element can be accessed by an index address. So the first index address is 0, and the second element will be 1. So because these are array, and so as you all know, array contains elements, and each element will have an index address. So to access these elements, we have to use the index address. So the first element will be 0, followed by 1, and so on. And so I will be using I as our index element. So initially it will be 0, then followed by, I'm going to use a.student. Okay, student here is our array name here, JSON array name. So it is a student, so I'm going to use a student here. I use a here, this is our JSON file, a. So that is what we use here, the a here. So a.student. And then, just like C, like I said, just like C, to get the length of an array, right? So I'm just going to say length. Alright. So basically, this statement means I'm trying to get the length of the array. So it should give me 2. So therefore, I'm going to complete it. So I'm just going to say for I less than equal a.student.length. Okay, so then followed by x++. So like I said, if you are aware of the for statement in C, so this is it. Then followed by, I am now inside the loop. Now I think I can get now the data, the first data. What's the first data? The first data is ID here, right? Then followed by dname. Now, as you can see in our topic here, list of topics, this is the syntax to get the data. Alright, so you will have here the variable, JSON variable, that JSON array name, then the index, and then followed by the object variable. So an example of that will be something like this here. Here it is. Alright, so A is the JSON var, right? JSON variable, that student, that's the name of the array, and then the index will be I, and then followed by the object variable, which is the ID here. Alright, so all I need to do is to put it here. There you go. So we're trying to get now 1 here, as you can see here, the 1. Alright, so the variable used for this data 1 is ID, so I'm just going to say ID here. Okay, so A is the JSON variable, that the name of the array, and then I is the index address. I'm trying to get the 0, right? We're getting the data from this first element. All right. So this first element here is 0. So I'm just saying 0. That's I. So initially I is 0. So something like this, right? So some programmers, they will assign it to a variable, right? But if you're trying to display it directly, then you can just use this one here. Okay, so it's something like this. Or again, get the data and assign it in a variable, and then later on you can display this data. So in this case, we're just going to get the data from the JSON file and assign the data in a variable. Let's do it something like that. No? So the next is, right, let's call it the dname. Let's call it dname, right? So it should be here dname, right? However, because dname is an element with an attribute, all right? So we're trying to get this Michael here, all right? So because these two are attributes, the gender and the specs, all right? So how do we do that? So again, we will just follow the syntax, as you can see here, all right? So we will be using something like this. So if it is the value of the element name, which is dname, then we will be using something like this. Okay, so as you can see here in our syntax here. Okay, so it will be something like this. So I'm trying to get now the value of the dname here, which is the text. All right. So again, like I said, for you to better understand this statement here, you have to watch my video. I already created that. I already have that in this channel, and this is the thumbnail of that. Right? So again, this means that this is an attribute, right? This is an attribute, and this is a text or the value of the element. So it is represented by hash code or hash symbol, then text, and attributes will be represented by @ sign, and then the value or the variable spec or whatever variable you have, right? And then this is the value s, right? For the gender, the value is male, so as you can see there, right? So it is something like this. Now I'm going to get now the gender. So I'm just going to call it as mgender, then followed by this one should be @gender, right? There you go. Okay, again, we will follow our syntax, and it is something like this. So here will be the attribute name. All right. So if it is element value, you will be using hash code, hash character, and then the word text. If it is attribute, you will be specifying here @ and then attribute name. Right? Now for the specialization, it is called spec. So I'm just going to say here spec, and then here I'm just going to change this to spec. So again, we're trying to get the value, and whatever is that value, I'm just assigning it to a variable, something like this. All right. So we got now these two, the ID, the value of dname, and the two attributes of the dname element. Right? So something like this. And then we will get age. So if you can see, ID and age are just the same. So I'm just going to copy this one here, paste it here, and just going to change it to age. And therefore this one will be changing it to age. Next will be marks. But marks is a parent. It has 3 elements inside, CW, ME, and FE. FE. So these are the things that we will get. All right. So if this is the case, then we need something like this. So this one here. All right. So you just have to specify again the same thing here, marks, that marks. So just like the age, no, it's the same here. However, because marks is a parent, so we have to tell which element. No? Marks became an array actually. So we have to tell which element are we going to display. So again, if you will review our JSON file, the result of the JSON file, it is like this. So as you can see here, we have marks and then we have here 0. So again, if you look at it, it is something like this. So here it is. So this marks here became an array. All right. So because we have only one marks here, right? We have only one element here, and so therefore it is only 0 here. All right. So we have only one element. So meaning to say that element is only 0. But if we have two elements like this, exactly like this, so something like we have it something like here, right? On the next line here, line 11, same as like this, then we will have element 1. But since we don't have, so we will have only element 0. So as you can see here. So this is how we access it. No? So we will just say student, then the same as ID and age, that marks, but because marks is an array, so we will just say 0 here. And then that CW. All right. So we're just trying to get this one right over here. Then the next is ME. All right. So I'm just going to assign this to a variable. Let's call it as MCW is equal to, there you go. All right. And so I think they are just the same now, ME and FE. So I will just copy this one here. This will become ME. This will become FE. So I'm just going to change this to ME, FE. All right. So again, it doesn't mean that you always do this one. No? So for me, I just get the value and I assign it in a variable. So it depends on the problem that you are doing. Sometimes you need to display it immediately without assigning it to a variable. So you can just simply get the data from the JSON file and display it. Or if you need to compute, I mean, it is part of a computation, then just use like this and place it in a computation, in a formula of a computation, right? So something like this. Okay, so this is already the data. All right, so I just place it in a variable so that for me it will be easy because first of all it is only short. The variable is only short. All right, so now since we have the data, then we can now display. Like I said, we will just be displaying it as something like this. We'll make it simple like this. All right, so the data 1 and then followed by the name, followed by the gender, and then the specialization, and then the age, and then the CW, ME, and FE, all in one line like this. They are just separated by hyphen, the character hyphen here, or the dash character, right? So let's display it. So I think I will be using a variable txt. Again, I think we have created a video also wherein we assign all the data that we would like to display in a variable. Okay, I think we have that video also, and that is how to access and display XML data. This time XML data, and we will display the XML data dynamically in a web page using AJAX, JQuery, and HTML div element. So I will be using the same technique here. So if you did not yet watch this, please do watch it so that you have a better understanding of what we're trying to do also here in what I'm trying to apply here in our tutorial video here. All right, so I will be using txt. So I will put everything in txt, the variable txt, and then I will be displaying in the end after the loop the value of txt. We will display it in our div here. Alright, so whatever is the value of txt, we will display that, the value of that txt here inside the div. That is what we're trying to do here. Alright, so outside the loop, I will set my txt to be null value or no value at all. Alright, actually it has a value but it is blank. So txt is equal to txt plus, let's say, mdid. Then plus, just going to say something like this. Alright, there you go. So that we have a space here. Now after the data, we will have space and then followed by the dash character and then followed by a space. So that's the reason why. And then I will just be copying this, and I think I will just be doing something like this. So this one will be md name, this one will be followed by gender, this one will be followed by spec, this one will be the age, this one will be the CW, ME, oops, I think we have a, right, I think, alright, so something like this, oh, gender, okay, it will be like this, then ME, and then followed by FE. So these are our variable here. Alright. Okay. So on the same line, we are displaying each of this data. And then when it goes back to the loop, it will get now the next record, which is this ID equal to here and the rest of the data. Alright, on the next line. So therefore, I think I need something like a BR here. There you go. Okay, so that when it will get the second record, so it's now on the next row because of that BR. Alright, and so I think it is something like that. So at the end of the loop, after getting all the records, the value of txt will be all this data here. And so I think we need to display it now. And so we need something like this one here, right? So dollar here, that append txt. So we will now insert the value of txt into our div here. All right, the ID of our div here is here, and so we are going to use the here. All right, so I'm going to save. Let me refresh it. Let's see if it is going to run now. And so if there will be some errors, then we'll have to find those errors. All right, so this is how it is. So let's see. I'm going to refresh now. It should give me the same output here. Oops. There is an error here. So let's see. Again, I pressed F12. Let us see where the error here, no? So it says here, X is not defined, line 13 here. So this is an opportunity for us to find the error. Oh, all right. So this is the problem here. I use X++ here. It should be I, no? So I equals 0, I less than equal A, that student, that length. So I++. Where did I get this X? So anyway, it should be I. So that's the meaning of this error message here. I'm going to save it now. Go to refresh. And so as you can see, it is now running. Okay, when I refresh it, it is now running. So it will be something like this. All right. So now as you can see on the last part of it, all right, there is a hyphen still there. So I think in our code, there is no need for this one here. Just simply like this BR, and when we run it again, so there is no more. If you don't like that one, no? So I just remove it so that it will be much better to see, to look at. right? So that's how it is, no? Okay, so again, if you look at our program here, so I just use a for statement here. It will start from 0 because this is 0. This is element 1, so that's the meaning of this. Student.length, again, it means the length of the array. So that means 2 because we have only 2 elements here. So less than a, I less than a, that's student.length, then I plus plus. So it will loop until the end of the record. So that's how it is, as simple as this. All right, so this is how you get the data. When you get the data, you can now do whatever you want. Okay, for the numbers, you can use those numbers, these numbers here. This is represented by MCW, ME, and MFE. So you can use this in computation. Maybe they are part of a computation, or maybe they are part of a conditional statement. So once you get the data, or once you got the data, then you can use those data in anything, depending on the problem that you would like to solve. All right. So what is important is that we got now the data. All right. So as simple as this. So I hope you have learned in this tutorial video. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have learned. See you on my next one.